Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into the weather outlook for Europe and West Russia, specifically July 1st through 10th, 2025. Our mission really is to cut through the noise, highlight the key risks we're seeing. We're talking potential heat waves in Europe, storm risks brewing in West Russia, and crucially, how climate change fits into all this. We're pulling insights from, a whole range of top meteorological and climate models. Okay, let's unpack this. So starting with Europe.
Right, Europe, well, the models are largely pointing towards widespread warmer than normal conditions, pretty much across the continent for early July.
Warmer than normal? Like how warm?
Well, there's a high probability of above average temps, particularly in the UK, Western Central Europe, and then central southern parts as well.
Okay, and I heard something about Southern Europe already being in a heat wave.
That's a critical point, yes.
Yeah.
Southern Europe thinks Spain, Italy, Greece. They're bracing for a continuation of a pretty severe heat wave that actually started back in late June.
Continuation, wow. So what kind of temperatures are we talking?
We're talking easily exceeding 40 degrees Celsius. That's 104 Fahrenheit.
Ooh.
And Spain even saw extremes touching 47 Celsius. That's 117 Fahrenheit.
Unbelievable. I mean, that's dangerous heat.
Absolutely. Spain's Meteorological Institute is even suggesting that June 2025 might actually be its hottest June ever recorded.
So what's driving this? Just summer heat or?
It's more than just typical summer heat. What's really driving this is the dominance of high-pressure systems. You can think of it like a lid or a dome of sinking air.
Wow.
It traps heat, stops clouds forming, so you get these clear, very hot skies day after day.
Okay, that makes sense.
And another big factor is the soil moisture, or rather, the lack of it. There were spring droughts across large parts of mid-latitude Europe, leaving the ground very dry.
Ah, right.
And this creates this dangerous reinforcing feedback loop.
Feedback loop.
Yeah, the dry ground makes the heat wave worse, amplifies it, and then the intense heat dries the ground out even more.
Which means?
Which drastically increases the risk of wildfires. And, of course, major agricultural losses, too.
Right, a nasty cycle. And I guess that means less rain overall.
Generally, yes. We are seeing forecasts for drier than usual conditions across much of Western and Central Europe. Though it's worth noting, there might be some localized exceptions, maybe a bit wetter, windier, up in the northwest and perhaps the northeast.
Okay. So while Europe is dealing with this intense heat, what's happening further east, say West Russia?
Yeah, shifting focus east to West Russia, specifically the North Caucasus region. It's a different picture, more dynamic, I'd say.
Dynamic how?
We're looking at a pretty dynamic progression of weather there. Temperatures are forecast to climb steadily, starting in the mid-70s Fahrenheit, maybe getting up into the high 80s by July 6th to 10th.
Okay, so warming up there, too.
Warming up, yes. But with that heat comes the chance of intermittent thunderstorm activity, especially towards the end of the period, say July 8th to 10th.
Ah, okay. Not just dry heat, then.
Not necessarily, no. What's fascinating here, actually, is the potential for localized severe convective storms.
Severe storms? Like,
we're talking the possibility of hail-damaging winds. Historically, the region can even see tornadoes when conditions are right. As those temperatures climb and the atmosphere gets more unstable, more volatile, the risk increases.
But I thought the overall forecast for Southwest Russia was meant to be hot and dry.
Well, that's exactly it. Some broader regional forecasts do paint that hot and dry picture. But this divergence between the broad outlook and what some localized models suggest, it implies a risk. Even within that generally hot, dry pattern, you could get these intense localized storms, which could potentially lead to flash floods.
Right, so the big picture doesn't always capture those localized, intense events.
Precisely.
Okay, so we have the immediate forecast. Heat in Europe, potential storms in Russia. But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. How does this connect to the bigger picture, climate change?
Absolutely crucial connection. Europe, for instance, is projected to see significant increases in, well, everything related to heat waves. Their frequency, how intense they get, and how long they last.
And the human impact is already clear, isn't it?
Tragically, yes. Globally, heat-related mortality has nearly doubled in just 2 decades. And Europe specifically has seen about a 30% increase.
I remember those devastating heat waves, 2003, 2010, 2022.
Exactly. Tens of thousands of lives lost. It's a stark reminder, this isn't just about uncomfortable weather, it's about lives.
So what's the climate mechanism behind this intensification in Europe?
Well, it's complex, but one key factor is how global warming seems to be affecting major climate patterns, like the North Atlantic Oscillation, or NAO. Seems warming is making the NAO behave more extremely in summer, and that directly intensifies European heat waves.
And this affects everyone equally. Are some groups more vulnerable?
Definitely not equally. Vulnerable populations, the elderly, people with chronic illnesses, outdoor workers, they're disproportionately affected, and cities too. The urban heat island effect is very real. All that concrete and asphalt absorbs and traps heat, making cities significantly hotter than surrounding areas during these events.
Okay. And turning back to Russia, you mentioned it's warming faster than the global average. What are the climate implications there?
Indeed. For Russia, one projection is that these severe convective storms we talked about, they're expected to increase in frequency and intensity.
More storms.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it creates this really complex web of interconnected risks. Droughts can fuel wildfires, for instance. But perhaps one of the most critical issues for Russia is permafrost thaw.
Ah, right, the frozen ground melting.
Exactly. Nearly 2/3 of Russia sits on permafrost. As it thaws rapidly, it threatens critical infrastructure. We're talking oil and gas pipelines, roads, railways. The very ground is becoming unstable.
Wow, that's a huge systemic risk.
Huge. And then you also have the threat to agriculture. Russia's a major wheat exporter, and increasing drought and unpredictable weather could really impact their harvests. This raises an important question about these deep vulnerabilities.
So let's try and wrap this up. We're seeing this dual challenge, aren't we? Europe facing more intense heat and drought, and West Russia dealing with this store potential, but also these massive systemic climate impacts like the permafrost issue.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it just underscores how urgently we need robust climate adaptation strategies.
Adaptation like?
Like everything from public health preparedness, how we handle heat waves, to building more resilient infrastructure, improving wildfire response. The whole package, really.
So a final thought perhaps for you, our listener. As you watch the news, as you prepare for what's next, remember that while these long-range forecasts give us crucial clues, the weather is incredibly dynamic. Real-time monitoring, localized warnings, they're absolutely essential. But maybe also think about how these interconnected risks, they demand more than just short-term fixes, don't they? They really point towards needing fundamental long-term investments in, well, in our future. How do we build resilience in this changing climate?